Powder River, Wyoming Territory, 1,877. The wind cut like iron filings. I was riding the south fence line with pliers on my belt, a coil of wire on the horn, and that quiet a man wears when he's outlived too much noise. Wire sang its dry note where the posts leaned. Far off, the land kept opening its jaw, the way it does here, like it means to swallow time whole. Routine saves a man. After the army, after scouting, after orders that cut deeper than winter, I learned fences made sense. Stretch, tie, check. If it held, I slept. If it failed, I fixed it. Half a mile shy of the cottonwoods, I heard a sound the wind couldn't grind, flat a human moan, thin and torn. I reined in, let the gelding think, let the prairie talk through the grass. There it came again, not cattle, not coyote pain. I eased off the trail. The sky was milk blue with a mean edge. Grass whispered at my stirrups. Then I saw something that didn't belong to the land, a wrong shape at the foot of a cottonwood, splayed against the trunk like a man's bad idea nailed to good earth. For a heartbeat I thought scarecrow. Then the shape moved. She was tied in an X, rawhide burning wrists and ankles, head turned to the wind, as if the prairie itself had judged her. Buckskin torn, beads dulled by dust and blood. A gag cut her mouth harsh, breath shallow. I slid down in one motion, showed empty hands, kept the Winchester low. The gelding huffed. The air smelled of sage and iron. No smoke, no fresh prints close, only the fact of her. Her eyes found me dark, alert even from the bottom of hurt. No pleading. Pleading had been used up. Easy, I said. I'm cutting you loose. The knots were spiteful work. My knife sawed rawhide that had chewed her skin bloody. A brand marked her forearm, 2 triangles chewing a circle. I knew it. Not stock, not law. Red Rock outfit, men with ledgers in daylight and dirty hands at night. When the last tie gave, her legs went like a colt's in a washout. I caught her ribs, careful where the blood had seeped. She was fever hot. I cut the gag and got her to the grass. Water first, I said. She drank neat, making a mouthful last. Her eyes kept touching south, as if fear had a compass. They ride at night, she rasped. They tied me so the land could finish what they started. I don't preach, but a man's bones still carry lines he forgot to memorize. What you do when no one's looking, God counts that twice. I got her up front in the saddle. She weighed less than what I've carried out of worse places. We moved for the line shack. My eyes worked edges, wash, sky, bird scatter signs the prairie offers if you've learned to read the margins. Nothing. Either I was early or they were too certain. The shack leaned into a red dirt rise. One door, one window, a lento stacked with posts and salt. The smart move was the main cabin, 2 miles west, but her breath wouldn't carry 2 miles. I shouldered the door and took her in. The place smelled like creosote and old coffee, what a man smells like when he's outlived company. She tried to stand on pride. Pride failed. I set her on the cot. The slice along her ribs wasn't deep, just filthy, the kind of wound fever loves. I boiled water, found carbolic, tore a shirt into strips. I've stitched horses that fought me more. She didn't make a sound, just stared at a knot in the rafters, working her breath like a prayer she didn't owe anybody. The first pour of hot water pulled a small sound from her. I kept steady. Yeah, I said, that part hurts. Wind shouldered the shack like a big animal wanting in. Light went from gray to chalk by noon. Broth warmed her from the inside. Sleep came in stutters, 10 breaths, a start, 10 more. I checked shells, latch, the habit of survival. When her eyes finally opened clean, I was stringing a second kettle. Why? She asked. Because you don't leave people like that, I said. Not a sermon. She looked at my bandage job. You sew like a woman, she said, almost a smile at one corner. I'll take it as a compliment. Silence held, not hostile. Just 2 breathing things, sharing air. I split kindling with a thought I didn't like. Whoever tied her had meant someone to find her, someone to be marked by it. Name? I asked. Tala, she said. Red Bird. Elias Boone. Elias Boone, she repeated, rolling it like a thing she might need in a hurry. Her eyes steadied. They will come, I figured. You carry yourself like someone who left once already, she said. That obvious? Only to someone who's done the same. The kettle hissed. Outside, a hawk carved a slow circle into a sky with too much memory. The room waited on a question I owed. Why would they tie you like that? Because I know stones, she said. My mother showed me where the earth hides water when the sun gets mean. I spoke when they drove cattle to a spring that was not theirs. So they let the earth decide my voice. There it was, land and law fighting under men with cut glass voices. I've scouted for officers who said justice with a map open and a glass in their hand. I watched Cheyenne families march to a temporary place that turned permanent until the winter wrote their names. She saw it cross my face. People who learn the weather of men watch for weather. You know the mark, she said, nodding to her arm. Red Rock, I said. Town judges for sale. Night riders on retainer. They crossed the river first, she said. In that small line of her mouth I saw steel, not pretty steel, just the kind that holds an edge. I cracked the door. Wind shoved dust inside and brought a far metal tick like a spoon on a tin cup. Spur on a stirrup. The hair lifted on my arms. Stay on the floor, I said. Against the cot. Head down if the wood breaks. She didn't argue. She moved like someone who's hidden before. I put the Winchester across the table, checked the Colt, took one breath, and made it do its job. Outside, the world did that trick it does before trouble looked ordinary, then wasn't. The smell hit next. Horses not watered right and whiskey through old leather. They came out of the grass like the prairie had grown men. 2 riders, dust on coats like dried blood. Hats cocked the way boys do when they think cruelty is a birthright. You Boone? The tall one called, mouth smiling, eyes not. You're standing on it, I said. Lost a little bird out here, he said. Hurt thing. Wild. Needs a cage. There's nothing here that belongs to you, I said. Water your horses elsewhere. He laughed at himself, always a bad sign. The shorter one with the worm scar didn't laugh. His hand rested soft on his gun the way men do who like what it says. Mr. Calder Pike says otherwise, the tall one went on, dropping the name like a stone to watch ripples. He's buying pretty views, springs included. Pike can buy the moon, I said. Doesn't change where water belongs. Maybe we have a look inside, he said. For birds. Maybe you don't, I said. That's when the world went quiet. Not peace. Decision. The gelding stamped. A cloud's shadow slid like a hand. My heart didn't race. It counted. 1, 2, 3, like setting straight posts through hard ground. If you enjoy the story, hit that subscribe button right away. And if you don't, then just hit the like button anyway to keep more Wild West love stories coming. Last ask, I said, voice flat as fence wire. Water your horses and ride on. Scarface cocked his head like a dog hearing something you don't. His hand set on the gun in that sideways way meant for show. I shot the post by his knee. Splinters bit leather. He flinched. The tall one's horse danced. Fear opened a thin cut in his grin. Next one's different, I said. You just bought yourself a long day, old man, he spat. Pike's coming to collect what's his. Funny, I said. I was fixing to tell him the same. They backed off. Hats helping them pretend it was their choice. When they were swallowed by grass, the wind took up its argument again. I holstered the Colt, not victory, just a marker. Inside, the woman stayed where I'd told her. That obedience wasn't surrender, it was trust. Trust weighs more than any caliber I own. They'll be back, I said. She studied the horizon in her head for a long time, then nodded once. Then we stand where the stones remember. I don't speak stone, I said. You don't need to, she answered, and for the first time, the warmth in that room didn't come from the stove. I rolled up my sleeves. A man can keep on riding away from himself, or he can stop and build something that holds. I meant to fix more than wire. The afternoon leaned toward us with grit in its teeth. Out here, even the sun has a mean streak. It doesn't shine, it stares. It stares so hard you start to feel the skin tighten across your back, and the edges of your thoughts get dry like paper left too close to a fire. By the time we finished closing the shutters and stacking spare fence posts against the door, the shack didn't look like a home anymore. It looked like an argument between man and the world, nailed together with whatever scraps of will were left. The table was braced against the front door. I'd jammed the legs into the cracks of the floorboards. 2 quilts, smoke-colored from years of fire and solitude, stuffed into the window gaps to hide the light. Only one slit remained open a rifle's width, and the hope behind it. Tala moved quiet, always quiet. She didn't creep. She flowed. Even wounded, she carried the stillness of something the land itself had taught. I watched her drag the last bucket of water from the barrel and pour half of it into a small tin pot. The smell came first sharp, wild, something between sage and dust after rain. "What's that?" I asked, leaning my shoulder to the wall. "Leaves from the wash," she said. "Medicine for air, and for fear." I gave a short nod. "I've had worse medicine." "Oh." She didn't smile. Not quite. But the corner of her mouth shifted like the beginning of a thaw. The scent filled the shack in no time. Whatever those leaves were, they didn't belong to this room. They belonged to the outside world, to something cleaner. It almost felt like the land had stepped inside to check if we were worth keeping. We worked in silence for a while. I checked the oil on the rifle bolts, ran a cloth down the barrel, measured cartridges by touch. She cleaned the pot, folded the rag, arranged small bundles of herbs near her pack. Sometimes she looked at me, not suspicious, not soft, just measuring, the way a hawk measures wind before a dive. I'd been alone too long. You forget what another heartbeat in a room sounds like. It changes the air, the timing of your thoughts. It asks for patience where you've built walls. When I first found her, I thought she was broken. I was wrong. She was tempered. As the light bled out of the day, we set our watch. The hills behind us turned to blue iron, the cottonwoods to silhouettes. From that window slit I could see the endless grass pulling dusk across itself like a blanket. Somewhere far off, thunder grumbled over Montana. Then, faint hoofbeats. "Riders," she whispered. I tilted my head, listening. The sound came and went with the wind. The gelding outside stamped once, uneasy. "Maybe scouts," I said. "Maybe ghosts," she said, half to herself. We waited. I doused the lamp and let dusk finish what darkness started. Waiting can tell you more about a person than any confession. She didn't tremble or pace. She sat on the floor near the wall, bowing her head, listening. I did the same, rifle ready across my knees. The hoofbeats drew close, then faded. Maybe a test, maybe just wind remembering an old sound. "They're sniffing around," I muttered. "They smell water," she replied. "Or weakness." "Oh, it's the same scent," she said again, eyes on the horizon that wasn't there anymore. I didn't argue. Before dawn, I scavenged 3 old tin cups, a strip of harness leather, and a few pebbles. We strung them low across the trail. A frontier alarm. When the wind touched them, they whispered. When feet touched them, they sang. She tilted her head. "You trust the land to warn you?" "I trust what I can fix with my hands," I said. "That's almost the same thing." Morning came colorless. We ate jerky and coffee thick enough to chew. Her wounds had closed some, but fever sweated on her neck. She tied her hair back with a strip of rawhide and stepped outside, bare feet against the dust. The sun hadn't burned the dew yet. She knelt and pressed her palm to the ground, whispering something too soft for me to hear. When she looked up, she said, "The wind will carry them here before noon." "How do you know?" "The stones told me. They're restless. Zill." I didn't say it out loud, but I felt it too. By mid-morning, dust lifted on the far ridge. 5 riders, one dressed cleaner than the rest. A lawyer, maybe. Or worse, a man who believed paper could own rivers. They came straight, no sneaking. I stepped to the porch with the Winchester cradled easy. The fancy man took out a folded sheet and read in a voice that had never had to shout for a meal, "By order of the Territorial Reclamation Board." "Stop there," I said. He hesitated, frowned. "You are Mr. Elias Boone." "That's right. You are in possession of disputed land and water." "Disputed by who?" He smiled the way a snake shows teeth it borrowed from God. "Mr. Calder Pike." There it was, the name that had burned into her skin. I didn't bother answering. I reached for a water can, uncapped it, and poured slow onto the porch step. The dust hissed, drank, darkened. "Water knows its road," I said. "You don't." The man blinked. One of his riders spat into the dirt. Another shifted his rifle. "You threatening the law, Boone?" "No," I said. "Just reminding it what's older." They didn't like that. 2 rifles barked warning shots meant to scare. Splinters jumped off the doorframe, one cutting my cheek. I didn't flinch. I just breathed once, slow, aimed low, and put 1 bullet into the crate of blasting powder they'd hauled for intimidation. The sound hit like thunder under our feet. Dust rolled through them. Horses reared, screaming. Men cursed and dove for cover. The lawyer coughed and wiped his fine coat with ruined hands. "Mr. Pike will hear about this," he shouted. "I expect he will," I said, levering another round. "He's overdue for a lesson." They backed off, red dust swallowing their pride. When it was quiet again, I turned and found Tala standing in the doorway. Her expression didn't change, but the color in her eyes did deepened, like a fire deciding to live another hour. She stepped down, carrying a handful of small stones. One by one, she placed them in a ring on the porch and poured a cup of water into the center. "What's that do?" I asked. "It tells the land who we are," she said, "so it doesn't mistake us for thieves." I nodded, though I didn't fully understand. Sometimes respect is better than comprehension. The smell of burned powder still hung in the air. A hawk circled low, riding the updraft of what we'd just survived. We ate supper off tin plates, oats, and a scrap of bacon. No talk. The stovepipe had taken a bullet and wheezed smoke into the room. I cracked the window just enough to keep us breathing. Tala's face in that half-light looked carved from something old: grit, patience, a line of sorrow that didn't ask to be pitied. "If you want to leave," I said, breaking the quiet, "I'll take you tonight. I know trails no one rides after dark." She didn't answer. She looked at the ring of stone still damp with water. "Men who tie a woman to a tree," she said finally, voice low but sure, "learned it from other men who tie whole peoples to the wrong places." She brushed a strand of hair from her face, eyes never leaving the circle. "Staying is my choice today. Tomorrow, maybe I ride. But not because someone says I must." Her words hit clean, without decoration. Freedom doesn't shout, it just refuses to bow. "Then we hold here," I said. She looked up at me and nodded once. That was all. We split the night in halves. I took first watch by the window. She took the second. Between the two of us, the hours stretched long and honest. The wind prowled around the cabin, rattling the tin and making the cups whisper now and then. When my eyes got heavy, I handed her the rifle. She didn't ask what to do, she already knew. I lay on the cot, boots still on, watching the flicker of firelight paint shadows on the rafters. Memory came creeping, same as it always does when a man's guard slips. That winter camp came back, the one by the frozen river. The faces, the silence. The boy with the blue beads who didn't make it past morning. Orders had come down from men who'd never seen the snow eat a human sound. And I'd obeyed. I'd walked away alive and hated myself for it ever since. "Elias," her voice came soft in the dark. "You don't sleep." "Used to it." "Not the same thing." "No," I said, "but it passes for it." She rose from where she'd been sitting, the rifle resting across her knees. "The wind is restless tonight. It's got reason." Then the first tin cup jingled just one note, then another. We froze. The second cup trembled. Not wind. Wait. Her hand went to the bow she'd made from a wagon rib and gnarled sinew. I snuffed the lamp, felt my heartbeat settle into that slow, useful rhythm it takes before something happens. A shadow crossed the crack of the window, just a shoulder, a hat brim, then nothing. We waited long enough to hear the silence start breathing again. When they were gone, she handed me the canteen. I took it, grateful, and noticed her reaching up to the small stone hanging at her neck. She pulled it free and placed it in my palm. "When you think your hand will shake," she said, "let the ground hold it." The stone was smooth, warm from her skin. I held it, felt something steady travel through me that wasn't mine. "You're not afraid?" I asked quietly. Her answer came without hesitation. "Afraid, yes, but not ashamed of it." She looked out toward the night beyond the window slit. "Courage is only choosing where to put the fear." I turned the stone in my hand, the edges polished by use, and nodded. Outside, the wind shifted. The cup stopped singing. The prairie exhaled like a beast settling its head for sleep. I set the stone in my pocket and sat by the door until dawn. If you like Wild West love stories or Wild West stories, drop a bunch of 1 second and your place in the comments for the Wild West Love channel. Tell me where you're listening from, so I don't feel so alone out here. The third morning rose cold and glass clear. A thin mist clung to the coulees, turning the grass silver. You could hear the land breathing if you stood still long enough, the quiet shift of air over stone, the whisper of dust against dust. Tala and I stood on the ridge where the cottonwoods thinned into open prairie. Below us, the river ran thin as a knife line, a thread of silver cutting through red earth. Farther out, the land bulged up in low ridges and shale bluffs, and beyond them, the world just kept going. From here, you could see everything good and bad. That's the trouble with high ground. It tells too much truth. Through the spyglass I kept from my army days, I spotted movement along the southern horizon. Wagons, 3 of them, mules pulling hard, men riding flank. The sunlight flashed off something metallic, barrels, maybe, or Creed made visible. "They come," Tala said beside me, her voice flat. "Not fear, just fact." Pike? Who else believes he owns what he hasn't earned? She was right. Even from this far, you could tell who led them. The center rider sat too straight, too polished. Calder Pike never walked anywhere dust could touch his boots. He'd built his empire on papers and loopholes. Men like him thinking ink could rewrite the shape of rivers. 3 wagons, I said, each with 4 men. That's 12 riders plus him, maybe more in the rear. She nodded, her eyes narrowing against the glare. "He brings his army of paper and powder," I added. We watched them for a while, silent. The way soldiers watch weather. When you've been through enough battles, you learn that waiting can be as violent as fighting. Back at the shack, the air carried a stillness that felt like before a storm. I oiled my Colt, checked the rifle again, laid out ammunition on the table. Tala ground herbs with the butt of a knife. Not for healing this time, but for smoke-dark powder that would mask our trail when the moment came. "You ever met him?" I asked. "Only his work," she said. "Fences where rivers used to run, guns where herds used to walk." I gave a small grunt. Sounds like the man. Around noon, I rode down halfway to meet him. The sun hung high and merciless, whitening every color into bone. The closer I got, the clearer it became. Pike rode like a man surrounded by his own importance. The men around him wore their guns easy, confident in numbers. When I reined in a few yards short, Pike smiled that banker's smile, thin, expensive, and fake as polished brass. "Elias Boone," he said, tipping his hat as though courtesy meant something in hell. "Didn't expect to see you this far north." "I could say the same," I replied. "But then, greed travels faster than horses." Loaf. His grin didn't falter. "Greed? No, my friend, progress. Civilization. Water belongs to those who can make it useful." "That so?" I asked. "Funny thing about water, it's already useful. Always has been." His gaze drifted past me toward the hills. "You've taken up with a savage woman, haven't you? The Cheyenne girl." I kept my jaw still. "She's got a name." "They all do," he said lightly. "But names don't stop bullets. Neither does arrogance." Then, Pike leaned forward in his saddle, lowering his voice. "I'll give you a chance, Boone. Hand her over. Walk away from the spring. You'll live easy. Land, money, a place at my table. There's no future in siding with ghosts." I studied him for a long breath. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of mule sweat and oil. The world around him shimmered, like heat was trying to wash him off the land. "Ghosts are the only honest thing left out here," I said, "and I've already got a seat at a better table." He chuckled, low and ugly. "Suit yourself. But don't say you weren't offered mercy." I never trusted the kind of mercy that comes with a price tag. I turned my horse and rode away without looking back. When I reached the ridge again, Tala was waiting. The look on her face told me she already knew everything. Some people don't need ears to hear the truth. "What did he offer?" she asked. "Enough rope to hang myself." She nodded once, unsurprised. "He will come at night, when the ground cools and the men feel brave. Then we'll make the ground unfriendly," I said. That evening, the sky bruised purple and gold, Tala showed me how to build a fire that didn't smoke, how to use damp grass to keep the flame low and steady. She mixed ash with soil and marked our cheeks with it. "The wind smells skin," she said. "Now it will smell dirt instead." We rigged the tin cup alarms again, this time farther out. Then we waited. Waiting was all there ever was between men and the mistakes they'd chosen. When darkness settled, I told her the story that had been poisoning my silence for 11 years. "I was with the scouts when it happened," I said quietly. "Winter, up near the Washita. Orders came down to clear a camp Cheyenne families. They said it was hostile territory. We went in before dawn." She didn't speak, just listened. Her eyes, dark in the firelight, held no surprise, only recognition. "There was a boy," I said. "Couldn't have been 10. Blue beads on his shirt. He didn't make it past morning." I swallowed hard. I didn't pull the trigger, but I didn't stop the ones who did. I followed orders. Then I rode away, built fences, tried to believe in quiet. Tala stirred the coals with a stick, sparks rising between us like tiny souls. "And you think that silence keeps you clean?" "No," I said. "Just busy." She reached across the fire, her hand resting on mine firm, not gentle. "You cannot fix yesterday," she said. "You can only choose where your feet stand when the next order comes." For a long time, the fire's hiss was the only voice in the world. I met her gaze, and for the first time, I saw something that wasn't accusation, it was permission. Not forgiveness, but the right to try. We sat there until the stars burned bright enough to light the ground. She told me stories then, not about war or loss, but about rivers that sang and stones that remembered footsteps. She said her mother used to hum to the earth before sleeping, so that dreams would come back kind. When her voice finally faded, the cups on the line trembled one note, then another. We froze. The horses out front shifted, ears twitching. My hand went for the rifle, hers for the bow. The faint clink of metal came again, closer this time. "They're here," I whispered. Tala nodded, eyes narrowed to slits. "Let them hear what the land says to thieves." I waited until the rhythm of footsteps settled into confidence, the mistake all men make right before dying. Then I cut the small cord that held our trap, a burlap sack of sand perched over the narrow wash. The weight dropped, the sand burst, and the world turned blind. Dust rolled like a living thing. Horses screamed. One shot rang wild. Another answered itself. Tala moved like wind through reeds, silent, quick. Her bowstring hummed once. The sound was soft but final. I took a step into the doorway, eyes squinting through the dust. No need for more killing. The confusion was enough. They retreated into their own noise, shouting names, firing at ghosts. The land swallowed them. When quiet came again, I looked at her. She stood still, one hand pressed to the doorframe, breath calm. "Why didn't you shoot them?" she asked. "Because I've shot enough men to know it doesn't fix the hole it makes." She nodded once. "Then maybe this land has room for both of us." We waited until dawn before stepping outside. The prairie looked clean again, as if the night had washed it. The first light touched the ridge, turning every blade of grass into glass. I turned the little stone charm over in my pocket, feeling the smooth edges warm against my skin. I didn't realize my hand was steady until I saw it wasn't shaking anymore. 11 years, I said quietly. 11 years I carried that winter inside me. Tala looked out toward the river, then let it thaw. Zoe. She started walking downhill toward the springhead, her shadow long across the grass. I followed, not because I was told to, but because the road looked right for once. At the edge of the bluff, we stopped. The horizon shimmered with heat even though morning had just begun. You could almost taste what was coming, the battle, the reckoning, the choice. "This won't end easy," I said. "Nothing worth keeping ever does," she answered. Her voice carried the calm of someone who had already decided to live free, or not at all. I watched the clouds forming out west, slow, dark, deliberate. The kind of clouds that make men forget pride and remember shelter. It struck me then that the West wasn't a place. It was a question. What kind of man are you when the law is far and the only witness is the wind? That morning, I found my answer. "Hey there, friend. Take a moment and get yourself a full glass of water. Your body will thank you." Noon in Wyoming is an honest thing. It burns away everything that pretends. By the time the sun hit straight overhead, the world was white and hard, like it had been scrubbed clean with bone dust. The wind had quit, waiting for someone to make the first move. Pike made his. From the ridge above the springhead, Tala and I watched his little procession crawl into view. 3 wagons, 8 riders left, mules panting, wheels squealing. The red dust behind them rose straight up. No wind to carry it, just a column of arrogance. He'd chosen the hour when shadows hide shortest. The time every fool believes is his lucky one. "They're coming straight for the water," I said. "Like all thirsty men," she replied. We'd spent the morning laying our plan in quiet language. The prairie could understand lines of damp grass for smoke, a rock throat for echo, and a prayer of dust for cover. Tala moved with purpose, bare feet light, eyes measuring the land like a map she'd drawn herself. She stopped by the pool that fed the springhead. "This place remembers everyone who ever begged from it," she said. "If we guard it right, maybe it will remember us kindly." I knelt beside her, touching the mud with 2 fingers. It was cool even under that savage Sunday. Then let's give it a story worth keeping. When the first wagon dropped into the draw, we lit the grass line slow, whispering smoke crawling along the bluff, hugging earth instead of sky. It would blind them without choking us. The wind, faithful for once, bent just our way. Pike rode in front, still polished, still pretending the land was a boardroom. He raised his hand. The wagons halted. "There," he barked, pointing toward the shimmer where our fire lay crawling. "Damp the fuse line. Bring the crates." His men fanned out. Some led mules. Others unlatched the wooden lids that hid blasting powder meant to break rock and law. From my vantage, I saw their rhythm. Move, shout, lift. None watching the ridges. Arrogance again. It never learned. Tala crouched beside me, bow drawn, eyes narrowing through the haze. "Now?" "Not yet," I said. "Let them believe the land listens to them first." The heat rippled so fierce you could almost see sound. Then Pike barked again, his voice snapping across the draw. "Light it!" Oh, only he didn't know our smoke had crept ahead of his fuse. When the first spark touched, the wagon shuddered, reared, and died with a hollow boom. Dirt geysered skyward. Mules screamed, bolting sideways. A second wagon lunged off the embankment, wheel catching on rock, splintering. Men scattered, cursing, half blind. We stepped out then, 2 figures against the smoke. Not ghosts, just people done running. "Hold your fire," I shouted. My voice bounced off the bluffs, came back twice as large. Pike turned, coughing, face blackened with soot and disbelief. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "You're a relic, Boone. Both of you are. The world's moving on." "Maybe," I said, "but not without paying its debts." I walked forward slow, rifle low, the kind of pace that lets a man choose what kind of ending he wants. Tala walked beside me, dust rising soft around her ankles, hair alive in the heat shimmer. The men who could still aim raised their guns. I stopped 20 paces short. "Listen up," I called. "This water doesn't belong to Pike or Boone or any man with ink in his veins. It belongs to whoever needs it to live. That's the law older than any you print." Someone behind Pike muttered, "He's crazy." "Maybe so," I said, loud enough for them all. "But a crazy man's still got a trigger finger." That earned me stillness, the first smart thing they'd done all day. From the smoke behind us came movement figures on horseback, maybe 15, riding out of the grass like they'd grown there. Ranchers, neighbors, men who'd signed the plank I'd carried through the night. They fanned wide, rifles at rest, not aiming, just standing. Their faces were burned, tired, resolute. Pike's jaw twitched. "Bought yourself an audience?" "No," I said. "Just company that finally remembered what side of the river it drinks from." "Oh." I lifted the plank from my saddle, thick, pine-smelling, edges rough. Across it, in black paint, read the words, "Water Sharing Pact, April 1877. I planted it in the dirt between us, the nails already half started from my night's work. "Every hand here signed it," I said. "One spring, all drink. No man fenced out. You want a test that start digging your own graves while the ground's soft." Pike laughed, brittle as dry twigs. You think paper makes you right? You mocked me for mine. Oh, this isn't paper, I said. This is wood. The land understands wood. He swung off his horse, boots sinking into the mud by the spring. You can't stop progress, Boone. I nodded. Never meant to. Just meant to steer it toward decency. The silence after that was the kind that decides futures. The wind picked up at last, lifting our smoke eastward. It carried the smell of scorched powder and sage, the scent of justice half done. Pike looked at the faces around him, his men shifting, unsure. He saw the ranchers on the ridge, rifles easy but ready. He saw Tala standing tall, unarmed now, eyes steady as horizon, and he realized numbers didn't favor him anymore. He spat once into the dirt, then turned. Mount up. One of his men hesitated. What about the crates? Leave them. Let the savages play king of puddles. He rode off without another word. The others followed, some glancing back with that mix of relief and shame men wear when they've just survived by luck instead of honor. When their dust finally thinned, the world grew quiet again, real quiet, like a room after prayer. I walked to the spring, knelt, and cupped my hands in the water. It tasted clean, like new beginnings sometimes do. I let it run down my wrists, washing the soot from the lines. Tala joined me. She knelt across from me, scooping water and letting it fall back, palm to palm. Now the land remembers you, she said softly. Think it forgives me? She shook her head. The land doesn't forgive. It endures. That's better. Behind us, hoofbeats sounded again, different this time, slow, rhythmic. 3 Cheyenne elders rode from the south, horses painted with white hand marks, no banners, no weapons, just the quiet authority of people who have already survived everything. One dismounted, tall despite age, eyes sharp as crows. He looked at Tala, nodded once, then at me. You stood in the right place, he said. His English carried weight, like each word had been earned by years, not given by birth. We're learning where that is, I replied. He studied the plank with its fresh writing. This will hold, as long as we do, I said. He smiled faintly. Then the water will remember both names. They rode on to bless the spring in their own tongue, voices low, melodic, blending with the murmur of water, until it was hard to tell where prayer ended and current began. I turned to the gathered ranchers. Some shifted awkwardly, hats in hand, like boys caught doing good without meaning to. Sign again if you need to, I told them. But keep to it. No fences across thirst. A murmur of agreement rolled through them, nothing loud, just honest. One by one, they touched the plank, the gesture of men who'd rather keep peace than write it. When they were gone, only silence and heat remained. Tala stood looking at the spring, arms folded. You did not have to stand with me, she said. Didn't feel like I had a choice. There's always a choice. I thought about that, then nodded. Yeah, there is. But sometimes a man gets tired of choosing wrong. Her eyes softened, though her mouth didn't move. She reached down, touched the water once more, then straightened. Then maybe you start living right. I laughed, a small rough sound that surprised me. That's the plan. We stayed there until the shadows lengthened again, 2 shapes cut from the same stubbornness. The world felt wider somehow, less cruel. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost haunting my own land. I looked up at the sun dropping west and spoke half to her, half to whoever was still listening. Guess progress learned a new word today, respect. She tilted her head, watching the light catch the ripples. Maybe, or maybe it just learned patience. Either way, the spring kept running. The sound of it was steady, forgiving in its own quiet way. If you're watching on TV, don't hesitate, grab your phone and hit subscribe to my channel, so you'll never miss out on our amazing characters. Evening laid honey over Powder River. The rocks let go their heat. The day exhaled, long and low, as if the land itself were sighing after holding its breath too long. The plank with the pact stood upright on its post, sun-glazed and sturdy, the black letters glinting like old truth rediscovered. The water whispered against it as though reading the promise out loud. The Cheyenne would keep guardianship of the headwaters, the ranchers would ride in turns, their names chalked in careful rows. No one claimed the sun anymore, and somehow that made every man richer. We rode the river margin slow, our horses' hooves muffled in the soft earth, the air thick with the smell of willow and wet stone. It wasn't quiet, not really the kind of not quiet that comes when a place is finally at peace. I didn't tell her to stay. I never would. Love that has to be ordered isn't worth the breath it costs. So I invited instead. There's a cabin west with a window that faces the willows, I said.